Floorlords. You
I
know,
just say
just
from the
say,
USA representing
yeah,
Floorlords
yeah,
Crew
USA, USA.
Leanski.
Yep, 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 yep.
Okay, super.
Just say that.
Ah, okay, okay. Drei, zwei, eins. Servus, Grüezi, and welcome not to the best, not your favorite podcast with your favorite B-boy host, your favorite breaking show, and my guest this time. Oh my God, all the way from the USA, representing legendary Floor Lords Crew. Please make some noise for Leanski.
Hey!
My G, my G, my G. So first of all, before we start with anything, I always like to give the flowers to the people, yes, because I only do this shit with people that inspire me, and I think did a lot for the culture and everything. So first of all, thank you for everything you did in your whole life for the culture. I know you are very into the culture and you like to give back and each one teach one like it says here, you know. So respect to you, sir, and thank you very much for taking your time and doing this with me in our channel.
You're welcome. You're welcome, man. You're welcome.
Thank you, thank you. So we started already talking off camera, and I had to stop it, and so we can record it. So we talked about back in the days when you grew up, you had a struggle, and we talked about how was the struggle here in Europe, right?
Mhm, mhm.
So please continue the stories when you was anxious to go to a jam.
So yeah, so growing up, first of all, being from New York, growing up in Boston, and Boston and New York, because I would go back and forth. It was a lot of anxiety. I had family who also, was indulged in the street culture in New York. And then, growing up in Boston, there was a lot of street culture, which, is street culture. Um, what I mean is the street life. You know what I'm saying? Street life. Um, so growing up, family members selling drugs in gangs, growing up in Boston, that's where I started my dance career.
So
You know what I'm saying? Like
what year are we talking now?
oh yeah.
What year are we talking?
Oh, we're talking, oh man, when I first moved so I moved in 1970. So I was born 1974. I think I moved to Boston.
Hmm.
Or 1973, when hip hop started in New York. I moved to Boston.
Okay, okay.
Uh-huh. So that move, when we first moved to Boston, we had no family there. You know what I'm
Mhm.
saying? So we went back and forth to New York. In a short, I'm not gonna get into too much because there's too much to talk about.
Of course,
I had
we
a stepfather, who my mother got with, and my father, my father broke up, and then we moved to Boston with a new boyfriend.
Mhm.
Her boyfriend was from Manhattan. When my mother first moved to New York, she moved to Manhattan. When she
Mhm.
met my father, they bought a house in Brentwood, Long Island.
Nice.
So we ended up moving. I was 6 years old. We moved to Boston. You know what I'm saying? At that time, um, we had no family, so we would come back and forth to New York. You know, I had a few cousins that started coming to Boston, Chino and Eddie, who started teaching us a little bit about breaking. But at the time, we weren't really serious. We were kids. Me and my brother weren't serious. Um, we grew up watching Soul Train. So Soul
Nice.
Train was the big thing. So Soul Train, we started seeing people locking. We started seeing people popping. So that's what inspired us. That's what inspired us. Um, there was a group in Boston called the Funk Effects. They were a big group that inspired us also. But like I was talking about going to block parties and the jams back then, this is like 78, 79. This is where we started like going to block parties. Now, block parties at this time, um, were not, a place where you could just go and breathe, you know what I'm saying? Like be unaware of things that were around you. You know what I'm saying? There were a lot of things around you, that, there were gangs, they were people selling drugs, and they were party people partying. So that, as a kid, you don't really realize, all these different things, but then you start seeing certain things happen around you. You know what I'm saying? And you're just there to dance. You're not paying attention, but these things you see, you know. And then you also grow up in neighborhoods as time goes on, and you start seeing, um, people. You start seeing things in your community that are not healthy for you. You know
Mm-hmm.
what I'm saying? So this is one of the things I was talking about. A lot of trauma in the community.
Mm-hmm.
Now like I was saying earlier, I don't know how that was in Zurich. You know what I'm saying? Or where you're from. I don't know if you guys got to see that.
So,
You
of course, we only know the stories when we hear from the OGs, the talk and everything. But what I can say, I think, I mean, I'm born in Vienna, and my parents got to Vienna in 85-ish, something like this.
know?
And
Yeah,
in Europe, like this, the states, Western Europe more, they were
yeah,
always like established places where you didn't have really like a ghetto or something, or like when you hear the stories that you have many neighborhoods with a lot of drug dealers and things like that, that was not really that present, I think.
yeah,
So
yeah,
you can't really compare these things, so.
yeah, yeah. So how hip hop came about was, it came from a place that was really nothing, to do but to figure out something creative. You
Mhm,
know what I'm saying? So that's what hip hop really came about, was from doing nothing to becoming something.
mhm,
You know what I'm saying? So, this is how we all got inspired, but we also got inspired because we didn't want to do those things. We wanted to find a different way of life through dance, rap, DJing, writing, you know,
so you tried all
even
elements.
beatboxing.
You tried all
Yeah, all the
elements.
elements, so that's how all the elements was created. You know what I'm saying? Was because we got to see all these different things, so we chose, one of the elements to get us through the day.
Mhm.
You know what I'm saying?
When
But also,
Sorry, when did the people know about elements? Who said these are?
I'm gonna tell you right now, um, the elements, Africa Bambaataa brought all the elements together. All
Okay.
these elements were alive, they weren't breathing. You know what I'm saying? So I think it was 1982 when he created a tour to bring to Europe, was when they created the hip hop tour.
Mhm.
And that's when the word hip hop elements started coming together. You
Mhm.
know what I'm saying? Because I think it was some promoters from Europe that was in New York, and he kind of brought them together, or they kind of seen all the elements, and I think they just wanted to bring those elements to Europe. You
Mhm.
know what I'm saying, for this tour, so they started bringing all the elements to Europe. Now all the elements were all around, like they weren't together. It was Africa Bambaataa that brought all the elements together and took it on tour, and that's when it was official that it was hip hop.
Oh.
And I think that was 1982 that it was official, like hip hop culture.
Mhm,
You
mhm.
know, um, but all the elements were alive before that. You know what I'm saying? So we were doing all these. You see people doing graffiti, people at parties doing, writing in black books, people breaking, up rocking, rapping, DJing. All these elements were alive. It wasn't until he took it on tour, and it became.
So the block parties you talked about, how old have you been when you visited the first ones?
I was probably like 9,
And
maybe like 9, 8, not maybe like 8.
so you
We were kids, so we didn't really have anything to do. So, I was probably like about 8 years old, like
and
going to
you
the
went
block
with your
parties
friend? You went with your
with
friend?
my sisters, my oldest sister and her best friend. They would take us to all the block parties. But at these block parties as a kid, you got to see like people fighting, people getting jumped, like uh you got to see
So
different
all
things,
all ranges of ages were there? What do you think
Yeah,
were the
yeah, all
oldest?
ranges. It was a whole neighborhood. Block parties were outside. So, you went with your friends, you went with your sisters, you went with your brothers, it was a community thing. It wasn't a party, like, it was a community. The whole
Mhm.
community would show up,
And how
you
regular is
know.
that?
It was for us, it was like every summer. Like every summer there would be like, maybe like in different neighborhoods because we would go to different neighborhoods to the block parties. And sometimes I would go to New York and go to block parties with my family.
Hmm.
So if we was in New York, my cousins would take us to a block party,
Hmm.
you know what I'm saying, or something like that. So it could be like, 5, 6, 7, block parties a year
Hmm.
in the summertime.
So which neighborhood had the best?
Oh man. So in the 80s, I think around my neighborhood, I think Ripley Road was one of the best ones.
Mhm.
That was a street that used to be in Dorchester in my neighborhood. One of the best ones that I went through in New York was probably one. They used to throw these block parties in it's more like a amphitheater party where they actually filmed Wild Style in Avenue D, well,
Okay.
in the Lower East Side. It was the not the Avenue D. I'm sorry about that. Uh, hold on 1 second. Let me remember. Uh, FDR Drive. So that amphitheater right there, they used to throw block parties, and we would go to those block parties. Me and Flo, that was Flo's neighborhood, and we would go to those block parties. So those were kind of like my favorite block parties to go to,
Mhm.
because I got to learn new dances. Because I wasn't just a dancer, I wasn't just a b-boy, I was a dancer. So my thing was I would go to New York with Flo, and I would spend months in New York. I would spend like 2 months with him in New York. He would come to Boston and spend 2 months. So we would be out there practicing dancing. And then that's where I would kind of like learn some of the dances and I would bring them to Boston.
Ah, nice.
You know what I'm saying? So I used to bring a lot of dances to Boston because I would go to New York, learn some of the dances at the block parties, and then come back to Boston and start doing the dance. People would learn some of the dances.
So
There were other people that were doing it in Boston too, but
I'm curious, like a block party is like an event nowadays, right? And
yeah,
and
yeah, yeah.
nowadays and
It
nowadays
was organic. It was organic. It was
that's
not.
what I want to ask because like nowadays an event, you know when when it starts, you know when it ends, you know what the program is. So how did like the people just brought their turntables, their big boxes, they start the
They
music?
would just bring their turntables, set it up, and the word would just get around because people would, they would have the speakers. They would have like 20 speakers, so it wasn't like this little. Like the craziest thing was back in the days, the sound was so much bigger and better.
Mhm,
Analog will always be better than digital.
mhm,
You know what I'm saying? And I don't know how close digital can get to analog, but also the music that was played was also played with instruments. So even the first rap records, they were playing instruments. They weren't playing, you know what I'm saying? They weren't playing. So the music that came out, like if you go to a jam and you hear a song and you have a live band, when you have a live band, you really feel the energy.
of
You know
course.
what I'm saying?
It's
The
only
energy you feel more. So back in the days when they played the music, they would have like 20 speakers. You know what I'm saying? Outside. So you had all these speakers, big speakers, huge speakers. Now they're playing the music super loud. So now you're actually feeling this music, which is analog, which you're actually feeling the drums, you're feeling the synthesizer, you actually felt the music more.
Mhm,
You know what I'm saying? So you felt the music a lot more back in the days. It was just like that. Like that was something that, you know what I'm saying, you felt more.
mhm.
You know what I'm saying? So that was something that was different. You know what I'm saying? Because now you're feeling the energy. So now the music, you got 20 speakers, people hearing that everywhere. So now people are going to that place.
Yes, yes,
You know
yes.
what I'm saying?
Yes.
Now you know you also got people that are going out telling people, oh, we're doing a block party, come to the
Yeah.
block party,
Yeah.
you know.
Yes. 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 Yes.
So that's how it got out.
In general, how long was it like a block party? Was it like just a couple of
Man,
hours?
it could be from like noon to like 8 at night to like 10 at night. It was really till people got tired and went home, or DJs had to go do something else. But it was no time limit, because a lot of the power that was also coming from,
Hmm?
they weren't coming. They were stealing the power,
Yes, yes, of
you know.
course. Yes.
So it was like it was an all day thing, unless the cops came or unless something happened. Also something could happen. You know what I'm saying? Like sometimes things happen. It could be a fight. It could be something.
Yes.
And sometimes that would end the block party right there.
That's what I wanted to ask next. I guess the police came many times and stopped it because it's not legal to throw it, you know.
They never really came like that. Like
Okay.
I think they really it was really when something happened that they came.
Okay, okay.
They never really bothered. They seen people having fun.
Mhm.
They just never really bothered. It was so much going around, so much crime happening that they were more worried about those things. You know what I'm saying? It wasn't too much policing on the music or how they was getting the music. A lot of people could have been arrested for stealing friggin', a power from the city,
Mhm.
but this never really happened. And
But
I had family in Manhattan and the Bronx, but there were also block parties in Boston, that people were
yes.
doing. Boston is only like 3 hours away from New York.
Mhm.
You know what I'm saying? So we was, like the same energy was also traveling to Boston. There were people moving to Boston, people from Boston going to New York. Elders, like the elders, were going to New York to
Mhm.
start doing this type of stuff in Boston too.
I
You
mean,
know,
the word spreads, right? And everybody does
yeah,
it.
yeah, yeah. It was just like that. People had family. The same thing. Like we were from New York, but we
Mhm.
lived in Boston.
I
So
mean,
that connection was there.
you can't really know official numbers, right? How many people attended one. But
No.
what do you think, or which one was the biggest one you attended?
Oh man, the biggest one. I mean that those ones at the amphitheater in New York were the
Yeah,
biggest ones
yeah,
that I
okay.
I went to in New York. The ones in Boston, we had a place called Franklin Park, and they still do them there that are pretty big. And there's thousands of people that go to those ones.
Mhm. Mhm.
Just like the ones in New York, it'd be thousands of people. There's millions of people in New York. You
Mhm.
know what I'm saying? In a neighborhood, and just in Manhattan, the
Mhm.
Lower East Side. You know what I'm saying? Like there's thousands of people that live there.
Mhm.
So who knows? It could be like maybe 5,000 people at a 10,000 people at a
Crazy.
block party.
Mhm.
It'd be a lot of people. You just
I
never
mean, there
knew.
was
It could be
just
a thousand.
you saw this docu on Netflix about in 1969. There was also a festival for black artists. You saw
Yep.
that? You saw that one?
Yeah. I saw that. I saw that one. It was
Yes, there was
yeah.
also
I
like
seen
a crazy number of people attended it.
it. But that's how it used to be.
But this was
You
like
know.
was that like a block party then?
Yeah, but with just musicians. That was before DJs and all that
Yes,
was
yes,
coming
yes,
out.
of course, it was
You
69.
know,
Yes.
yeah, that was like before DJs were bringing their equipment out. But it would be like that. You couldn't count how many people was there. Like we didn't know, and we wasn't thinking about that. We were just thinking about going, having a good
Of course,
time,
of course,
and
of course.
dancing.
Yeah.
That was the whole focus.
Mhm.
No one in the place was thinking about how many people was there.
Mhm.
Not even the DJs. Everyone was just having a good time, feeling the vibes, and doing that whatever they were doing, whatever, popping, locking, breaking, and
And
that was it.
what do you think? Which element you fell in love most?
Well, it was dancing first,
Yes.
but yeah, that was my favorite. Like that was, dancing. I came up with my mother was a singer. My father was a musician. My father played the
Okay.
guitar. All my father's brothers, all my uncles, they all played instruments too. You know,
Nice.
my mom's is a singer, so we would have parties in our house since I was like 2 years old. You
Nice.
know, I was actually, like in the Hispanic communities, like it's a big thing to come home and have a party till 2, 3, 4 o'clock in the morning every weekend, Friday and Saturday. That's a big thing, in New York. We started like that, and then, as we got older, when I was like, maybe 3 or 4, actually 4 and 3, my brother, we were inspired by the Jacksons, by the Jackson Five.
Oh,
So we would copy them. Me and my brother would copy them when they would go on TV. We would watch them, and then we would like kind of use all their routines. We would try to do all their routines. So
crazy.
we would. My mother would have us dancing in front of my family. We were the Jackson too. Me and my brother.
That's crazy. My
Yeah.
cousin, female cousin, she also loved Michael Jackson. And I remember when I was small, she used to dress up like him, does the moonwalk. You know, in our culture, my parents from Serbia, uh,
Yeah.
we also it's very important the music and the parties and everything. So I can really relate to your story. Uh,
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
what do you think when did the block parties like kind of died out and why?
Uh, man, I think it started dying. Well, I know when breaking died out, it was like probably like 1986.
Hmm.
Um, started dying out. We were lucky that we were a hustling b-boy crew. So for us, like we kept, like we were also performers. So
Hmm.
we weren't just a crew. Like we were a crew that we went to jams, we went to block parties, but we also danced in the street for money.
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
But then from dancing the street for money, we started booking shows, from dancing the street. So
Yes.
then we started doing shows. So that was our means of making money. So we were hustlers. But like I said before, like I would go to New York and learn all the dances. So I would come back to Boston and teach people. So I wasn't just like a b-boy. I was also a dancer.
Yes. Yes. Yes.
So our crew was lucky enough that we had a hustling, like our manager. He was the president of our crew, Cisco, Kid Cisco.
Hmm.
He was a hustling guy, so he was good with the mouth. He would talk his way into doing shows, into all the clubs. So we were lucky that we were performing to like 1988.
Oh, nice.
And then he came to us and was like, look, like they don't want to hire us no more. They don't want to see breaking no more in clubs. But breaking really, like 1986, we couldn't go to a club and break. We were the only ones that would go to a club because we were performing and break. But in Boston, it died down. In New York, it was kind of dead too.
Hmm.
That's why Float moved to Boston, because um it started dying out in New York, and Float wanted to keep going. And we were the only crew that was making money. Float at a time, Float was huge. Incredible Breakers were like one of the big crews in Boston,
Hmm.
with the talent. They were known more, they were the most talented around that time to me.
Hmm.
And they were doing things that people are doing now. You know what I'm saying? Not the crazy, but they were the ones who innovated a lot of the moves.
Hmm.
You know what I'm saying? Like back in the days. Incredible Breakers were like on a whole different level of power moves, just be creative. Then you had a few other people. You had Kid Freeze. Kid Freeze was a part of a different crew. He was a part of Dynamic Rockers, but then he also had, after he left that crew broke up, he became Freeze Force, which was a different crew. Kid Freeze was always like a solo guy. You know what I'm saying? But Kid Freeze invented a lot of moves. And then you had other b-boys like Icy Eyes, who were innovators. You know what I'm saying? You had like Rocksteady. You also had New York City Breakers. Those guys were you know, at a point they were doing their things, but then you had people that were innovating the moves. So like Kid Freeze was an innovator. Icy Ice was another one who was an innovator. You know, you had Fast Break. You know what I'm saying? You had other b boys. Um, you had this other b boy. His name was Powerful. Um,
Ah, yes.
you know, you had there was other like my favorite b boys back then was before I even met Incredible Breakers was Flip Rock and Ken Swift. You know what I'm saying?
Okay, okay,
Flip
okay.
Rock from New York City Breakers
Mm-hmm.
was like one of my favorite, and then you had Ken Swift. Ken Swift was one of my favorite because when I saw Ken, like everyone used to just dance, but when I saw Ken Swift, you know, I kind of saw like his style. He was always stylish. Every time he went out, you could see the style. You see other people, but you couldn't really notice. You know, like everyone looked at everyone else, and you couldn't really notice too much of their style, except when Ken Swift came out. You could know every time he came out, you knew, you know, you wanted to dance with style. You couldn't
Mm-hmm.
have his style, but you had to create your own style. So that was one of the things that caught me from him. But when I met Incredible Breakers, it was a whole different story. You know what I'm saying? They were all amazing style, but they were also crazy um power moves, you know, innovative stuff.
Mm-hmm.
They were doing the first ones I seen like doing so many different things that I was just like, oh wow, like this is on a whole different level. You know, so they inspired me. I was the only one who could go to their practice
Mm-hmm.
because they had other people in, you know, who they taught, who went to other crews, who this kind of like back in the days, there were guys who would ask people to leave their crews and join their crew. And some people needed money, they needed to go do shows, but you couldn't really, you know, couldn't really do that if you danced with another crew. You had to be like, you know, a part of that crew,
Mm-hmm.
you know, and you couldn't go to no other crew. So if you went and did a show with another crew, your crew was going to be upset at you,
Yes,
you
yes.
know.
Was way more serious
So you
back.
had to be dedicated to that crew. So, you know, they had other people who they taught who, so I was probably the only one who could go to their practice.
Mhm.
So I got to see them battle each other. I got to see craziness.
Mhm.
But, you know, they stopped performances, they stopped doing things. So they stopped getting jobs. Float was coming to Boston already, and we were dancing in the street. We were doing shows. We kept going. So that's why he stayed in Boston. And you know, we ended up in 1986 getting a building. Now we got this building. We started working and helped building this building called Boston City Lights. So now he's working, making money, doing shows, paying bills, living in Boston. You know, now he's there. You know, so now we're doing shows. So we were doing hip hop shows. You know, and you know, lucky that I kept, you know, just not just being able. So we would do hip hop dance steps where we would add breaking.
Ah,
You know
okay.
what I'm saying? So that's how we. There's a video online. There's a bunch of video online of us doing like hip hop.
Mhm.
You know, and
But
like
I
19.
mean, back in the days, there was not really like separate categories, right? It was just one crew, and everybody danced everything, and you didn't say I.
No, 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 no. When you was a b-boy crew, you was a b-boy crew. You went
Ah,
to the party to dance with girls, you danced. You know, you did regular dances. Like you didn't have like all crews. Like you was a b-boy crew. You know, you had poppers, you had lockers, and you was a b-boy. But when you went to party with girls, you went to a party with girls. Like you didn't go. You know, if you went to a jam and they started playing break beats and started playing like hip hop that you could break to, then you started breaking. You know what I'm saying? But back in the days, you had all different styles of music. You know what I'm saying? That you could go to a party, you could do, you could dance to freestyle music, you
mhm.
could dance to, R&B music, because they played
So,
everything in the jam.
of course, like we said, you 9 years when you went to the first block party, and you remember the first time that you had an exchange, a battle at a block party?
No, because back then you were just going out and dancing. It wasn't exchanges.
Okay.
Like people weren't coming. My first exchange was with a crew that from Boston. That was my first exchange.
Okay.
You know what I'm saying? And we had a rivalry with that crew. They were
Okay.
older than us, and they were also going to New York and learning. You know what I'm saying? So the thing was for us, they were our rivals. So my first rival was with them, was a crew
Mhm.
called Unique Dominoes.
Okay.
You know, and we had a rival for years. Like we would battle for years and years because every time they saw us, it was a battle.
Hmm.
Like I could be walking down the street. I could be one time I was actually and we used to make money. You know what I'm saying? Like that was that's we made like $250 a day dancing in the street.
Hmm.
So one time we're like making money. Back then it was called rocking. People call it hitting now, but back then we would call it rocking. Everything was called rocking. Even when you went out and when you first started breaking, we didn't call it breaking or b-boying. We called it rocking.
Yeah.
Oh, he's going to rock. Oh, he's rocking. Oh, shoot. You know what I'm saying? So that's what we called dancing in the street for money. Let's go rock for money. You know what I'm saying? So one time we went to it was the Boston Commons and we was dancing, we was making money. And one of the members from that crew, his name was Pup One back in the days. He came and he was like, me and him was rivals. So he came and all of a sudden he called me out. He went out and we battled for like an hour right there, me and him. People were like, yo, stop. We're not making money. Everyone who we were making money, everyone left because we were so at it, like we were so in the face that the crowd was just like they just left. And me and him are just going at it. It was times I would be walking down the street and I always had a radio and I was walking down the street and these guys got off the bus, the same crew, and called me out and battled me. You know what I'm saying? Right there. Like that's how it was. It was like in your face. It was so crazy because it seemed like you was gonna fight. That's what it looked like.
Of course, for
You
the
know what I'm
people
saying?
who don't know, yes.
Because we were talking so much trash to each other
Yes.
that it turned people off. Only at jams, and I told someone the other day I was battling a friend of mine. It was a friend of mine. It wasn't even like we were serious.
Hmm.
And a friend of mine from my neighborhood punched him. And I'm like, yo, what are you doing? No, that's my homie. Like, we just battling, you know what I'm
Yes, yes,
saying?
it's not that serious.
But that's how it was back in the days because it looked so aggressive. You know what I'm saying? That's how it was. So, people saw me and this guy battling, and they was ready to put money in the thing, but then they seen how aggressive it looked. Everyone just left, and me and this guy battling, my crew was looking at me like, what are you doing? Like you messing up our money. But it was so serious. We were so rivals that we were just battling each other, you
Damn,
know?
damn.
So that's how it was. And even that till this day, like I told you earlier, my son just put out a book and it talks about the history of him growing up, being a b-boy, and also a DJ, but it also talks about mental health,
Mhm.
and that's a big problem in our community. I know in the States, you know what I'm saying? Like there's a lot of people who are not well. You know what I'm saying? I think there's a lot of people in the b-boy community who need help.
Mhm.
There's a lot of b-boys who need help, not even if they haven't been through anything with growing up. Because I know I saw a lot of different things. I went and got therapy, you know what I'm saying, to help me figure out my life, for me to become a better person.
Mhm.
You know, there's a lot of things that people don't talk about that they go through. You know what I'm saying? Even dancers who are trying to take it to the next level want to make, that's all they want to do, and they can't do it through dance.
Mhm.
You know what I'm saying? A lot of times they're not all right in their head. And a lot of times, banging your heads a few times can
Yeah.
also throw you off.
Yeah.
And
And then,
relationships,
and then you hear the stories from the OGs who did dirty stuff and kept doing it, and we don't want to talk with them anymore. We don't want to associate with them anymore. And yeah,
yeah.
and
But
of
the,
course, when
the
you hear
thing is,
stories
is
like that,
is
how they grew up,
yeah, that's the problem. Is they don't really know how to. They doing it the wrong way. You know what I'm saying? I feel like a lot of people, and that's the community. Period. Like everywhere, people are going through a lot. You know what I'm saying? There's a lot of females in this community that are going through a lot. Um, that need to seek help, man. You
Mhm.
know, B-boys, B-girls, poppers, lockers. Like if you've been through some things in life, I feel that that's one of the things. And I hope this book actually, you know, helps, because a lot of people think like, yo, if you go get help, you're crazy. No, it's you've been through a lot in life and you need help.
Mhm.
You know, it's not about, you know, a lot of times you can't handle certain, you don't even know what's going on. You
Mhm.
don't even know what bothered you when you was growing up.
Mhm.
You know,
I would
I
definitely
know a lot of things.
definitely recommend the book. Can you send me a link and then I'll put it in the description so people can also purchase it and
It's on Amazon. The name of the book
on
is
Amazon.
called
Okay.
These Are the Breaks. It's on Amazon. You know
That's
what I'm saying? These Are the Breaks by DJ Leanrock.
that's nice. That's
You
nice.
know,
In
and
case
it's
you
an
didn't
amazing
know,
book.
in case you didn't know who's the son from Leanski's.
Oh yeah, yeah. Leanrock's my son. Leanrock, B-boy El Nino
Yeah,
is my nephew, but he's basically like my son too. Like I kind of raised, you know, I raised my son, but I also raised four nephews. You
nice.
know, my nephew Flight, my nephew Jay Quest, my nephew um El Nino, and my nephew Rhino. We call him Jovi, you know, but he's another one. You
Nice.
know, these they grew up without their fathers being there for them, you know. So I basically through hip hop, me, you know, being able to help people all these years, um, trying to help, you know, kids stay out of trouble because
That's
you know,
amazing.
I finally moving to Hawaii was like one of the best things that ever happened to in my life.
Mhm.
You know, because I think living in the East Coast, like life is just coming at you,
Mhm.
and you wanting to be a dancer, a promoter, a DJ, all these different things. That's all I've been living all my life. You know what I'm saying? So um, it's a struggle. But when you don't see, you know, your day is a constant hustle.
Mhm.
Like you not having a job, you this is your job. You just waking up every day and figuring out
This is your job, not
like,
having a job. Yeah.
bro, it's crazy. Like not even understanding. You know what I'm saying? Like how much goes into trying to figure out how to learn how to book a show, like learning all these different things with not even knowing how to do these things.
I
And
mean, you have so much experience now. You can throw events, you can host an event, you can play the event, you can dance at the event,
but I learned that through watching, you
Of
know.
course,
I did
of
my
course.
own plays
Yes.
because everything I was around, I kind of learned. I was lucky to be around. Like when I started dancing, there was a DJ who used to manage us. So he taught us how to DJ.
Okay.
So, you know what I'm
Oh,
saying? So,
nice.
you know, going to, yes, I've been DJing since like 1983. You know what I'm saying? Like this guy taught us how to DJ, so it was a good thing. I had you saw it all around you. His turntables. I bought his turntables, which were SL10s. They weren't even 1200s. They were belt drive turntables and a little mixer. You know when he bought his 1200s. You know in 1983.
That's
So you know the things are like wild. You know, but yeah, I used to make all our tapes. We used to go dance in the street with.
mhm.
You know, we would get tapes from New York and tapes that we would dance on the street, remixes, Black Rascals and DJ, you know, Chuck Chill Out and Red Alert. We would dance in the street with those. But then, you know, I bought a tape deck and started making our own tapes. You know, I would go buy records, you know, and make our own tapes. I would go to New York sometimes and buy records, or I would go to, you know, store in Boston called Skippy White's and buy records, and that's how I would make all our tapes. You know, but yeah, man, you know, just being around it all, I was always an observer, so I would pick up everything. So I learned everything from being around everything that was happening around me.
Mhm, mhm.
You know,
So, when did you first time hear the word B-boy?
oh man, I can't even remember. I couldn't even tell you that.
Do you know the definition of it? What is the B standing for?
Like I said, when we first started, like really, we always called it rocking.
Yes.
You know what I'm saying? It wasn't till we started going to New York, you know what I'm saying, hanging out with Float and them, that we started hearing b-boying and breakdancing. You know what I'm saying? Because a lot of people would call it breaking. So it was when I started, the first word I heard was breaking.
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying? That's I heard that before B-boy. You know what I'm saying? So when I started hanging out with Float and them, that's when I started hearing B-boy. You know, B-boy, B-boy, B-boy.
Okay.
You know, but it wasn't a lot of back in like 79, 78.
Mhm,
Like people were just calling it breaking,
mhm, mhm.
you know. In New York, people, like people in the Bronx, I think, that's where it kind of like came from because it was, I was heard it was coined Bronx boy. You
Yes.
know what I'm saying?
Okay.
B-boy was Bronx boy, you know what I'm saying? Because that's where they felt it came from. So the thing about Flo's crew was Chino and them was from the Bronx. Float was from Lower East Side. Austin Paul was and Rappel, they were from Uptown Manhattan. So, you had these crews. Usually you would have like people like Rocksteady started in the Bronx. You know what I'm saying? But then ended up, the second chapter ended up being in Manhattan.
Okay.
You know what I'm saying? Because Crazy Legs moved to Manhattan. They
Mhm.
had a few B-boys from the Bronx, like we had, I think, Buck Four, Kiriaki, some of those guys were from the Bronx. As I, can remember, what I'm saying? Those guys were from the Bronx. But, think like Crazy Legs moved from the Bronx to
Mhm,
Manhattan.
mhm,
Ken Swift's from Manhattan.
mhm.
Um, Frosty Freeze was from Manhattan.
Oh,
Doze was from Manhattan.
yes, yes, I
You know
see.
what I'm saying? So the majority of the crew was from Manhattan. But, you know, I wasn't hanging out with those guys. I was more hanging out with incredible breakers,
I
like
see.
19 I met Float and Chino in 1983. They smashed the shit out. They burnt the hell out of us. That's how we met them. We used to go to New York. We used to go to New York and we would it's mad crazy. We would go to New York, because one of the other guys in my crew, Mad, his father worked for Amtrak. Amtrak is the bus you take to go to New York.
Mhm.
So we would the train. I mean, the train. We would take the train to New York, and that's how we would go hang out. He had family in New York, and I had family in New York. So we would go to New York and kind of like hang out, figure out what was going on. And we started going to all the clubs, started going to Roxy, started going to the Funhouse back in the days. You know what I'm saying? So when we would go to New York, we would never like because this is like 1982, 1983. Like a lot of b-boys were already traveling; they were on tour. Like so, we would go to the Roxy. We wouldn't see like a lot of b-boys that were super ill.
Mhm.
So we thought we were like super ill, and the other crew who we actually used to battle in Boston, they would do the same thing. They would do the same thing. So we got a win that they was going to New York and learning. So we started going to New York, you
Nice.
know. But the thing about it was, everyone was on tour. So we never really got to see anybody that was real crazy
Ah,
because Rocksteady, Dynamic Rockers, um, Dynamic Breakers, Magnificent Force, New York City Breakers, that was a crew that was traveling all over the world. Then you also had other B-boys that were traveling on their own with other shows, other tours, and things like that. So these young guys went to New York because they found out we was going to New York, and they brought Float and Chino back to Boston.
mhm.
And we used to battle them all the time. And they actually battled us at this club that used to sponsor us called Club California. And Float and Chino burnt the hell out of us. And we were just like, oh, what the hell are these? Like they were just doing so much amazing things that we were just like, they smashed us. So then we went back to New York, and then we ended up bumping into Float. And Float remembered us because it was like right after, like we was going back, and we started going back to New York. Like, yo, we got to go back. Like, there's other things going, and we were hungry at the time, so we wanted to get better
Mhm.
because we wanted to, smash Unique Dominoes. That was our thing. We wanted to come battle them. We wanted to be better. So we ended up bumping into Float, and he remembered who we were. And then we told him to come to Boston. We had some shows and we had some things back then. We were doing a lot of shows with a lot of rap groups. You know what I'm saying? So he ended up coming back to Boston
Mhm.
and doing shows, and then that's how we became cool. you know, and then I started going to New York and started learning from them and started coming back and teaching kids back in Boston,
So
you know.
nowadays you have like famous practice spots where people, when they travel to the city, they gather around and then they practice together. You had that back in the day too?
No,
Or where
you
did
know,
you
I
practice?
mean, I went to different community centers. Like I see, my brother was the one who inspired me. So I had like a place. I had a place called the Blackstone, like in the '80s. That was one of our practice spots. You know, the Blackstone, and then really the streets, man. We really didn't have hallways, streets. There wasn't a lot of places to practice. Like we didn't have places to practice. It was like hallways and streets, you know. And then I started going to different you know, community centers and asking, you know, I would bring a bunch of kids with me and tell the kids that put on a sad face, be like, can you let us practice? You know, you have a place for us to practice. And they would bring us to a little room and we would practice in there, you
Nice.
know, but that's how it was really. It wasn't really, you know, the only place I remember that we actually had back in the '80s was the Blackstone, you know. And then going to New York, practicing with Incredible Breakers, there was a club called the Ritz. It was a big club. That was a place that we would practice. And then Float had another place in his neighborhood in the Lower East Side where a lot of people would go. I
Mhm,
forgot the name of that space. You know
mhm.
what I'm saying? I'm sure it's not there anymore. But we would go there. But Incredible Breakers had a, you know, when it wasn't in there in Chino and Brian's mother's house, because that was another place where we practiced, you know. And Flo's mother's house, we would practice too. Flo had a room in his mother's house where he had mats, like the gym mats, and we would go in there and jump around and do flips and stuff like that. But
Nice.
you know, my house, I had a practice place where I had my DJ equipment, and you know, we had a room. My sister used to live with us; she moved out, and we had a big room, and that's where we would practice in that room.
Crazy.
You
That's
know.
crazy. The struggle, people, we can nowadays you cannot even imagine this, you know. This is so crazy story. This is so crazy story. Then you said like it died out in the middle of the 80s, right? And
Yeah, that
when did it became like popular again? Was it beginning of the 90s?
no, it wasn't. It didn't even become popular again. You know, the craziest thing was Float um started bringing these tapes back. He got these tapes of
Yeah.
Storm, like the first Battle of the Year tape
Hmm.
was the first tape that we saw. And Float was like, "Yo, check this out." He brought a VHS tape back from New York, and he put it in my thing. We were kind of going. We were still like our crew was still going to we were still doing shows like '90s, like you know, like '90s, and we were still breaking in our shows. And then sometimes in ciphers, we would do ciphers and we would break a little bit. But back then, that was called freestyle dancing. So freestyle dancing, we would add rocking, breaking, popping, and regular like styles dances, like the all the new dances that were out. We would mix it all together. And house dance, because house dance was coming out back then too. You know what I'm saying? So we would mix all those dances together, and that was called freestyle dancing. So we would mix all those dances. So we were still doing that, but we weren't really breaking like that. When we saw the first Battle of the Year, I think battle was when we kind of was like, oh shit, breaking is back. You know, we were always practicing, but we weren't practicing serious because we were more about doing shows. We were adding breaking, you know, to our shows, but we weren't really serious about it.
Yeah.
You know, it wasn't until like 19 um you know, then we started seeing this play that Flo brought us back because he had a homie that was a part of this play. Um, Get Original. They had a play. I forgot what the name of the play was. Um, but they had a play, and he brought us back a tape, and he showed us like Ken Swift had. Actually, the first tape didn't even have Ken Swift and Crazy Legs in it. It had Quick Step and some other guy
Okay.
that were breaking. It was Quick Step and some other guy. I forgot what his partner's name was. They were breaking. And then we kind of saw them breaking. We were like, oh shoot, you know. So the first tape was storming them. Then the second tape he brought back was Get Original. This was probably like 1990, That was like 92. And around the same time, he brought back the other tape. And then we saw another tape with Crazy Legs and all of those guys on it. And then we were like, oh, shoot. Like 1994, um, I think 1994, um, they brought the play to Boston.
Mm-hmm.
We had a show that day, but it was one of the guys who used to book us. We had a show like in New Hampshire somewhere, and Crazy Legs, Rocksteady, like Get Original, they came and did part of the play in Boston at this theater called the Strand Theater
On
with
their tour, they stopped.
Jeremy Alger. Yeah, they brought back they have bought it. So then what happened was after that they came back again. I think in like might have been like 1995.
Mhm.
And we met Ken Swift and Flowmaster. I think Fables was there, and we started talking to them. We were like, yeah, we be boys, but we were kind of like we were still hip hop dancing. I didn't break into it.
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying? And then we started talking more. You know what I'm saying? And then this other kid from Boston who moved to New York, moved back. He used to hang out with Rocksteady and them. So he was his name was Act One, and he was a part of another crew called the Boston City Breakers from Boston. And he moved to New York and started like practicing with Ken Swift and Flowmaster
Mhm.
and all that. In like 1996, we went to New York to the Rocksteady reunion. It might have been 97. I think it was 97 or 96.
Mhm.
And that's when we kind of saw like, oh, it's back. You know what I'm
Yeah.
saying? But we was already practicing, but now we're like actually just breaking more.
Yeah. And
You know
now
what I'm saying?
you mentioned the Rocksteady Crew anniversary, right?
Yep, that was one. I think it might have been 96. Could have
Also,
been 96.
people always say like back in the days, this was the event to go to, right?
Yeah, the Rocksteady
Mhm.
reunion. Yep, that's what
When
it was. It
when
was.
did you go
Yeah.
first time?
Yeah, we used to go all the time. We went every year. You know what I'm saying? And then this is like 1990. It might have been like 1995.
Okay.
You know what I'm saying? That we were like getting back into breaking. You know
Mhm.
what I'm saying? Like now it's coming back. Now we starting to see videotapes. We're starting to travel a little bit more. Um, it's growing more and more.
Yes.
You know, and then like 1998, 1997. Actually, I think we went to Pro Am. In 1998, we went to Pro Am.
Nice.
1999, we went to Pro Am. That was the jam to go to. Like Pro
Okay.
Am was the jam. You
Okay.
know, I think we went to 2000 and 2000, and then we got real busy doing shows. We
Mhm.
were like super busy doing shows, so we were going to New York a lot. Um, we bumped into because Flow connected us with Full Circle. So Full Circle was like the people we were kind of like kicking it with
Mhm.
in New York, and they created something called Full Circle Soldiers, and then we became a part of that. Man, I got to figure out what time is it. I don't know how long we've been talking. How long we've been talking now?
Now it's like 50 minutes, 55.
Oh, okay, we got time. We got time.
Uh,
Um,
I, we have like 20 more minutes. Is that good?
I just got to figure out. I don't have the time because we're using my phone.
Aha. Now it's
So
here.
let me just look at. Let me
Yeah.
look. I'll be right back. I'll be right back. Sorry about that. I just want to make sure I got to go teach the babies.
That's
I
awesome.
got I got 8 more minutes for you. I got 8 more minutes for you.
And
Eight
then
more
you have to
minutes.
go?
Yeah, I gotta go, bro.
Okay.
I gotta
Then
teach the babies.
okay,
I gotta
okay,
teach my
okay.
babies.
Okay, because we can talk for 3 more hours and we will have
Oh,
a
for
part.
sure. There's a lot. There's a lot to
Hopefully
talk
we
about.
can have a part two in the future soon.
Yeah, for sure, for
So
sure.
to finish it up, we're gonna skip the Fave 5. We're just gonna build the perfect breaker. Okay. So we have of course the four elements, top rocks, footwork, freezes, power moves, and then we're gonna add flavor and fashion. Okay. And I will ask you, and you would just tell me the best breaker in this category, right? So for example, top rock. Who is the best for you, your personal? Your personal flavor.
Pop rock. These days,
So just all time,
I'm gonna go
just for
all
you.
time, man,
This is
all
your
time,
perfect breaker.
all time. My all-time breaker is gonna be Float.
No, I mean just top rock, just top rock, just top rock.
Yeah, Float, Float, Float,
Float. Oh, okay, sorry. Yes, float. Okay.
Float. Float was the best top rocker to me.
Okay.
Um,
Rest in peace to him.
that rest in peace. That was my brother for sure. Rest in peace to Float. He was, to me, the way he just danced was just amazing. Like, you know what I'm saying? Like it was fluent.
Mhm.
He went up and down all the time. And that to me was like, style, flavor. To
Mhm.
me, he was the best.
Oh, definitely, definitely inspired a lot.
The second I'm gonna go with Ken Swift. Ken
Footwork
Swift
can switch.
style. Yeah, I'm just gonna just his style, the way he does his movements. Um, I'm gonna say style wise him. And then the third one I'm gonna bring up why not?
You mean for top rock?
Yeah,
Aha,
why not?
we just gonna choose one. We're just gonna choose.
Oh, one. Okay, flow for sure.
We
Flow,
take
flow.
flow. Okay, the next is footwork.
Footwork. Mm, man, footwork. Probably Ken Swift. I'm gonna give it to Ken Swift.
Okay, we take Kenny. Then power moves.
Power moves. Um, Power moves. I think I'm gonna go with because he got so much control. I'm gonna go with his name a little Korean guy. I forgot his name.
Ah, you mean
Haven't seen him in a while.
pocket?
Pocket, yeah, I think pocket.
Yes.
Speed wise and
Yeah, it's pocket.
and control, like he's the illest
That's
to me.
pocket. Okay, freezes.
Freezes. Oh my god. I think I'm gonna go with rocks right.
Ooh, that's always a good choice. Then flavor.
Flavor. Flavor, I'm gonna go with Ken Swift.
Oh, Kenny, the prince. And
Flavor.
last but
Yeah.
not least, passion.
Fashion. Oh man, that's so gone these days.
So yeah, yeah, that's so gone these days, unfortunately.
It's so gone these days. It's like people don't really
Don't
even understand
don't
fashion no more. I can't
don't
even
care anymore.
like I gotta look back, you know what I'm saying, to someone who's like super dope dresser. Um it's so crazy because that's not even thought of these days. Like I
That's a
gotta be
whole
dressed fresh
podcast,
all the time.
Linsky. That's a
And it's
whole
not even
podcast, just the fashion part.
it's so hard to even say right now. Um who is the freshest?
It can be from back in the days too.
I think I'm gonna go for back in the days, man.
Yes,
I
please.
think I'm gonna go with Kid Freeze.
Freeze.
Because if you look at some old Kid Freeze like pictures,
Mhm.
like he's like dressed, he got his big Freeze like chain, he got a Kango, he got on his, and
Represent.
he's still, the craziest thing, like he always had like the fresh gear. Like even in the 2000s, I would go hang out with him, and he would have his Pro Keds, his 69ers, his Lee, his Mock necks. He's still selling all that. He's still selling Mock necks and everything. You know what I'm saying? So to me, back in the days, like I think it would be him, Kid
I
Freeze.
mean,
Not he was also one of the most amazing power boom
nice.
guys.
Nice. So the perfect breaker from Mr. Linsky has the top rocks of float, the footwork of Ken Swift, the power of pocket, the freezes of rocks right, the flavor of Ken Swift, and he is dressed like Kid Freeze.
Yeah, back in the days. Kid Freeze back in the days. Kid Freeze back in the days.
So you have 3 more minutes. Brother, thank you so much for taking your time. Thank you. The stories was amazing. I hope we can have a part two soon. Um, I
Let
wish
me
you
know. Let me know.
I wish you
I'm
the
down.
best for the future. I hopefully see you in Switzerland.
Yeah, man, I'll try to make it, man. I wish I could have made it to Breakthrough this year, but like I said, this year, we're doing our anniversary,
Okay,
and
yeah,
they're
yeah.
doing You know, and the craziest thing is they do a competition. I think they're one-on-one competition. They send out to we do a jam in
Yes,
February here in
en-
Hawaii.
endless summer jam.
Endless summer, endless summer jam, and the winner comes here. So let's hope someone from Switzerland wins this
And
year.
if you have budget to bring a guy from Zurich as an MC, I don't.
Man, I wish we did, man. It's so hard sometimes
Of
out
course,
here to do
brother.
events.
Of
We
course.
make it happen. Like out here, it's not like the States, you know.
Yeah.
We're trying to make it, it's getting better and better, but it's kind of hard, man. Like it's really hard for us to do it out here. You know, we really need,
Always looks
to
amazing.
break it to the next level, man. I mean, let's hope
Footage,
shows like this
the
can
footage,
take it to the next level.
the footage looks amazing. So, for the ending, it's any last words and shout outs?
Man, peace and blessings to all, man. Make sure if you out there, get the Leanrock book.
Yes.
These are the breaks. And don't forget, man, to take care of your health, man. Mental health is serious in our community. And there's a lot of people who need help, man. And you're not crazy if you go get help, man. You're all right. You just got to deal with some demons that you ain't dealt with.
Mhm. Mhm.
Much love. Aloha. Blessings to all. And love you all, man.
Thank
Peace,
you so
peace.
Thank you so much for taking your time one more time. Really appreciate it and hear these amazing stories. For all the viewers, subscribe now, comment who you want to see next, thumbs up, become now a patron. You can support us monthly and follow this amazing guy Leanski on Instagram. Shout outs to Floorlords. We had so much
Leanski.
we had so much things, so I can't believe it. Part 2 will come soon. Promise.
Yeah, for sure. For
Uh,
sure. Let's do it. Let's do it.
Thank you again, Leanski. And that was your favorite Bboy host with your favorite breaking show. Peace.